So I'm François Le Goff, working on the Euclid product management, and I will start this webinar with a presentation on the Euclid 6 updates with the service release 3 that introduce fixes and improvements and new features as well. So this update was made available in last week on the 28th of April. And as with previous updates, the installation of the new version is recommended because you can benefit from fixes and improvements, but is optional as well. So there is no mandatoriness to this release. You can update from any Euclid 6 versions using the updater that you can download from the Euclid 6 website. So whether you have now Euclid 6 version 1.0 or 1.2 or 1.1, you can directly update to the latest version using the updater. You can also migrate directly from a Euclid 5.6 installation to this new version using the installer or the migration tool. Euclid 5.6 files can still be imported, so if you have Euclid 5 files, so in the old format, you can directly import this data in the latest version of Euclid 6. And this version is fully compatible with previous Euclid 6 versions, as well as Quasar as well. With the publication of version 1.3, we have made available a document, the release notes, which contains a description of all the things that have been included in this version. So you can access these release notes directly on our download page or via the news item that was published on the Euclid 6 website last Friday. Or if you have subscribed to the mailing list on the Euclid 6 website, you have also received an email with this information and these links. So let's go through some new features, fixes, and improvements included in this version. I will start with a new feature that was added, which is the dossier header reuse. This is a new function to help the users filling in the dossier header, which is the last step of the dossier creation wizard, and is a place where additional administrative data on the dossier and on the submission type is recorded. So here with this option, you can access previously created dossier for the same substance, and then the most recent dossiers are presented first in this list, and you can use previously entered data in these older dossiers as a starting point for filling in the dossier header. So this is particularly useful, for example, for not forgetting to include justifications for confidentiality claims that you would have submitted in previous dossiers, and it avoids you retyping the information. There is a small improvement that was added that can be quite convenient as well in some cases, which is the possibility to access a file directly after importing it. So when you import a Euclid file, you don't always know whether it's a dossier or a dataset or a substance dataset, a mixture dataset, or a reference substance. So with this new feature, once you have started the import process, there is what we call a background job windows that is activated, and you can access it clicking on this circle that will be blinking at the bottom right of your user interface. And when you open this background job window, you have access to the status of the import process. Once the import process is finalized, then you have a new link, this gray arrow pointing to the right, that will allow you to directly access the imported entity. So if you imported a dossier, then clicking this arrow will lead you directly to the imported dossier. In the same way, if you imported several files as well, you can see the list of all files imported and access them directly using these links. Another small improvement is related to the comparison tool. You know that this is the tool that is used to compare the content of two dossiers for the same substance. So if you have an initial dossier, you submitted an initial dossier to a competent authority in the past, and you create an update and you want to see what has changed between these two dossiers, you can either select two dossiers directly and run the comparison, or you can also select one dossier and search for the second one. It was not really convenient before, because there was no possibility to search by the unique identifier of a dossier, which is the so-called UUID. So now we have introduced in version 1.3 this possibility to select a dossier using its unique identifier. So you are sure using this unique identifier to select the dossier you wanted to compare. I'll be jumping to another improvement that we made. It's a new submission type, so a way to filter the content of your database in order to populate the data according to usually a regulatory context. But in that case, we noticed that there are some cases where data was submitted outside of any regulatory context. So in order to fill in Euclid information and to manage Euclid information in a context independent of any regulation or directive, then we have added this new exchange of experimental data submission type. This is still a prototype. We are going to see how it is used and discussed with we will discuss with the Euclid users community at the OECD level to see whether this way of presenting the content of a Euclid dataset is adequate for this purpose. And later on, we might introduce the possibility to create dossiers from this submission type. For the time being, it's just a filter in the table of content of your dataset in order to enter data independently of any regulatory context. The next point is about the dissemination preview. The dissemination preview is a tool in Euclid that allows you to select a dossier and filter the confidential content to have an idea of what will be, for example, made publicly available on the ECHA website after the submission of a registration dossier, for example. So by doing that, by using the dissemination preview, you will have access to a filtered dossiers that will contain only the public information, and the tool will provide you with a dissemination report. This is a list of fields with their publication status, either published or not published, or filtered because of confidentiality reasons. And this report was not sorted correctly in the past, so we have fixed that in this new version. And we have defined a default sorting column, which is the section name. The sorting is numerical, so you can browse through the content of your filtered dossier in a logical way. The other improvement as well is that we have fixed a problem that was preventing the users from copying the report content to Excel. So now it's possible. You can select all your dissemination report from Euclid and paste it inside Excel, and then you have access to additional filter and data processing functionalities provided by Excel if you want to have a deeper look at the content of this filtering report. Another point is the validation assistant. We have made some updates to validation assistant, but no change was made to business rules or technical completeness check. So there is no, in terms of ECHA of submissions of data to ECHA, there is no change in this release. We have only improved existing quality rules, for example, to consider late pre-registration number format as a valid one in case of a submission of a registration dossier for phase-in substances. And we have implemented also additional quality rules for section 2.1, so classification and labeling data, in order, for example, to check the correct mapping between the hazard classes and the hazard statements. The first quality rules for hazard endpoints have been implemented as well for the sections that are listed on this slide. So for ecotoxicological study reports or study summaries, and some hazard endpoints as well. And we will continue introducing more quality rules to give some pointers towards some potential deficiencies or problems in relation to the quality of the data stored in Euclid. The next point I wanted to address today is about the Euclid 6 server. For those who are using a server installation, we have improved a bit the launch of the client. So now the launch is automated, and you can directly have access to the client without additional clicks to start the application, for example. Already also since version 1.2 we made available an installer for Euclid 6 desktop for Mac OS. So now for those who are using this operating system, they can install Euclid 6 more easily. And because we had published this desktop installer with version 1.2, we have now made available for version 1.3 an updater. So if you have already Euclid 6 on your Mac, you can use this updater to update to the latest version. We announced this availability of the desktop installer for Mac at the end of February. So now this is going to be something that we will release for each new version of Euclid. The Mac installer and the Mac updater will be always available. Another point concerning the update of Euclid 6 is the public API, which is a tool that can be used by developers in order to build interfaces between Euclid and their own applications. It's available since Euclid since end of January, and it has been slightly updated in version 1.3. The update is not breaking anything, so everything that was available before is still available. But we have improved, for example, the possibility to link attachments to documents, and also to know which type of entity is imported using the public API for Euclid. So the documentation that is available on the website under support documentation has been updated accordingly. So I'll go through some feedback or comments received or questions received at the help desk here in ECHA to clarify some frequently asked questions. So the first thing I wanted to address is the way opt-outs are created in REACH registrations. So opt-outs are the case where, as a member of a joint submission, you need to provide your own data because of data sharing dispute or confidential information that cannot be shared or are too costly to share with the other members of the joint submission. And I wanted to show you in a few slides how it works with Euclid 6 and how to add more information as a member of a joint submission. So for all the opt-outs, so if you need to submit data because you cannot share it with the rest of the joint submission, you first need to enter this data in your Euclid dataset. So you still access your dataset using the correct filter, which would be for a member of a joint submission, and then you enter the data in this example bioaccumulation study summary under section 5. And then you need, in addition, to indicate the fact that you are opting out for this data, that you did not share this data with the joint submission members. And this is done under section 14. You create an opt-out document and indicate that you are submitting this information and provide a justification, the reason why this was not shared with the rest of the joint submission. So these are for the official opt-outs. So for data in section 4 to 7, and also in the classification and labeling data. And as soon as you indicate an opt-out in this section of Euclid, this data will be included in your member dossier when you create it with the dossier creation wizard. So that's for the mandatory data. And when you create your REACH registration dossier as a member of a joint submission, you need, if you want to include more data that are optionally submitted by a member of a joint submission usually, you need to activate the advanced settings of dossier creation. So this is the tick box that is presented here on the bottom left corner of this dossier creation wizard. So if you activate this option, then you have the possibility to manually include additional information in the dossier. And this is done by selecting first in the entities list the substance dataset. Usually it's indicated in bold, it's easy to recognize. And then you can browse through the content of this dataset to pick the documents that you need to include. For example, a summary of ecotoxicological information if you need to submit the PNEC, and a summary of toxicological information if you have derived DNELs and want to include that in your dossier. So you can see, based on your selection, you will see that the bottom part of the screen will be updated, which will represent the final outcome of your dossier, all the information that will be included. So there are two steps to include opt-outs. First, to indicate directly in the dataset under section 14 the studies that are added in your dossier, and second, to add any additional information such as summaries directly in that using the advanced settings of the dossier creation. Another point that we wanted to clarify today also is the way you navigate after the dossier is created to additional functions of Euclid, like the validation assistant or the export. So after the dossier is created in Euclid, there is no easy way to have access to these additional functions, but there are two ways still to do it. So the first one is, once you have created your dossier, you will see in the information panel at the bottom of your user interface the unique identifier of this dossier, the dossier UUID. So what you can do is copy this UUID and paste it in the top right corner of the user interface, which is the quick search, and it will give you access directly to the dossier, and you will be able to run the validation assistant or export the dossier to share it or submit it to a regulatory authority. So that's the first option. The second option is to go back to the home page of Euclid after the dossier creation and go to the dossier list, and the newly created dossier will appear first in the list. So then you can right click there, export the dossier, or run the validation assistant beforehand. So now I switch to another topic, which is the rich study results. This is a collection of Euclid dossiers that has been made available since 1 month on the Euclid website, and it's the collection of data we have received under rich registration process. This is now distributed as well as Euclid files in two ways: as a desktop installation. So this is a full Euclid installation that you can download, and that is pre-loaded with 15,000 dossiers for as many substances. The other way is to download an Oracle database that can be later on connected to a Euclid server. And depending on the use you make of the data, it might be convenient to access the data directly in Euclid using the user interface, or to access the data using the Euclid 6 public API. And you have to note that the use of the data is subject to specific terms and conditions that can have to be accepted before downloading the data on the Euclid website. So if you decide to look for the data, search for the data directly in the user interface, because that database contains more than 15,000 dossiers, they cannot be all presented or in your list of dossiers in your Euclid database. So you will have to use the basic search functions of Euclid to retrieve the dossiers using the cast number or any other identifiers of the substance. If you have any comments or feedback on this rich study results data package, you can contact the ECHA help desk, and we will use all your feedback for future improvements. Okay. Last thing concerning the feedback received from users. we received some questions about the next Euclid 6 update, which is version 2.0, scheduled for the end of October this year. And this update will also contain, as usual, fixes, improvements, and new features, but this will be also the time when we will introduce format changes to Euclid 6 documents. So now we are gathering all these format changes, and I wanted to already confirm some things concerning this release. Of course, we consider the 2018 deadline, and we will not introduce changes that will impact the registration process. So we confirm already, and it was confirmed in a previous webinar we hosted in ECHA, that Rich IT will keep accepting dossiers generated with all Euclid 6 versions, so the new one in October and all the previous ones. So the format change will not change the verification we make to the dossiers and the technical completeness check we are doing in ECHA. So that's for the first point. The second point is concerning the exchange of data, because if we do format change as we did in Euclid 5, it means that although it's possible to exchange data from older versions of Euclid to the new one, it was not possible in the past to exchange data from a newer version to an older version. So now with Euclid 6 we are working on a solution to allow that. So for a Euclid 6 version 2 user to export data and exchange that in a format that is compatible with an older version of Euclid 6. Of course, this will mean that there will be some not loss of data, but loss of data structure if this option is used, but at least it will be a way to keep exchanging data between users using different Euclid versions. So the next topic in the webinar is about the PNEC calculator, and I will hand over to my colleague Jesus to give you some information about this new feature introduced in Euclid 6 version 1.3.0.
Thank you, Francois. And good morning to everyone. My name is Jesus Vázquez, and I'm going to present you or to tell you about this new feature we have developed for this new Euclid release that we called PNEC calculator. At the end of the presentation, I will go also over some user feedback that we have received for the DNEL calculator, which is a feature that was introduced in the previous Euclid release. So what is it? What is the PNEC calculator? The PNEC calculator offers you the possibility to calculate and report predicted no-effect concentration, also called PNECs, in Euclid according to ECHA guidance on information requirements and chemical safety assessment in chapter R10. As for the purpose, the PNEC derivation is a key element for the risk characterization of a chemical substance. And therefore, the PNEC calculator allows you to derive PNECs automatically from the data that is already available in the endpoint summaries in different Euclid sections. Section 5.4.1 for adsorption, desorption, 6.11 to 6.16 for aquatic toxicity, 6.2 for sediment toxicity, and some endpoint summaries regarding the terrestrial toxicity. And these from a substance dataset or template, and these are reported back after the calculation is done in the corresponding endpoint summary under section 6 ecotoxicological information. It is important to note that currently the PNEC calculator only supports the derivation of PNECs for aquatic, sediment, and terrestrial environmental protection targets according to ECHA guidance. Thus, the current version does not support the derivation of PNECs for microorganisms in sewage treatment plants and the PNEC used for the assessment of secondary poisoning. So how it works? You can use the PNEC calculator by right-clicking on the endpoint summary under section 6 ecotoxicological information and selecting calculate PNEC from the menu that is displayed. By doing that, a new pop-up window will appear, and in this window all the results, which are the PNECs calculated according to the ECHA guidance chapter R10, are displayed in a tabular format by environmental protection target. For each environmental protection target, the dose descriptor, which in this case is an effect concentration, use as starting point for the PNEC calculation, and the assessment factor used to address uncertainties in the extrapolation are set by the tool and displayed in the corresponding tab as read-only information. Also to note that for sediment and soil, the type of extrapolation method used, that's to say the assessment factor or the equilibrium partitioning method, is also displayed. Okay. At the bottom of this pop-up window, there are 4 buttons: the edit, print, finish, and cancel button. The edit button enables an edit pop-up window, and I will refer to this in the next slide. The print button generates a report in RTF format containing the derived PNECs information as it appears also in section 7.5 of the CSR. The finish button closes the calculator after saving the results in the corresponding endpoint summary under section 6, toxicological information. And finally, the cancel button closes the calculator without any further action. But as mentioned, when you click on the edit button, a new pop-up window will appear, activating the edit mode. And this edit mode allows the user to select a different dose descriptor used as starting point, the use of non-default assessment factors, and the use of another extrapolation method in case of the sediment or terrestrial environmental compartments. It is important to note also here that any modification from default will require the user to provide a justification as to why this deviation is justified. And finally, all the PNECs calculated and the information used for this calculation process, as well as any justification provided by the user if there was any deviation from default, will be populated in the corresponding endpoint summary from which the PNEC calculator was started under section 6 ecotoxicological information. And this is it about this new feature that we call PNEC calculator. I will now like to go through some feedback we have received for the DNEL calculator. Many of you have noticed a discrepancy between the standard respiratory volumes used by the DNEL calculator for the general population and the values that appear in some examples in the ECHA guidance in chapter R8. The reason for this discrepancy is because the different average weights for the different population, worker population and general population. In case the inhalation route is involved in the DNEL calculation using root-to-root extrapolation, the dose descriptor used as starting point needs to be corrected considering the differences between metabolic rate of experimental animals and humans, allometric scaling, and human body weight scaling. For the latter, ECHA guidance chapter R8 states that the body weights to be used in the calculation are 60 and 70 kilograms for general population and for workers respectively. The use of the standard respiratory volume for experimental animal is the preferred way to correct the point of departure using the root-to-root extrapolation. The standard respiratory volume for experimental animal is calculated from the standard respiratory volume from humans per kilogram body weight and applying the corresponding allometric scaling factor. In the next slide, I will show you an example. In this example, the standard respiratory volume for human for 8 hours is 6.7 cubic meters per person. So if this respiratory volume is transformed per kilogram body weight, it will depend on the average weight that it is considered for each of the human populations, and therefore it will be different for workers, for which the average weight is 70 kilos, and the general population, for which the average weight is 60 kilos. So then these standard respiratory volumes for humans are multiplied by an allometric scaling factor, that if in this case the animal is a rat, this value will be 4. So you will see different values again for workers and general population. And since the relevant exposure time for the general population is 24 hours, this has to be corrected, and in this case gives a value of 1.35 cubic meters per kilogram body weight for the 24-hour exposure for general population. And that's it from my side. I will now hand over to my colleague Mark Roberts, who is going to tell you about the reports generator.
Hello there, everyone. My name is Mark Roberts. I'm going to be presenting to you today a new feature of the report generator. There's two things with this new update. There's a new feature called Manage Reports, which allows you to store and upload your customized reports. And we've also included on the Euclid 6 website 2 new reports which you can upload into the report generator. So just to show you how the Manage Reports feature works, as I mentioned, you can upload and store the report templates in your Euclid 6 installation and use these with the report generator. You can further customize your saved report by, for instance, defining which output type you can use with your report, or by selecting the various submission types which are applicable to the report. So just to show you a practical example, how to store and further customize report templates. You go to the Euclid 6 dashboard, you then left click on the report generator icon and select Manage Reports. A window will show, and on this window you can either add a report, edit an existing report, or delete an existing report. Note also that you can find further information on this by clicking on the help icon on the bottom, which is circled in green there. So when I add or edit a report, I can then further define and customize the report itself. I can add a name to the report. This is a mandatory field, so you need to fill it in. It's a recognizable name which you want to give to the report. Second of all, I upload the report templates. This is also a mandatory field. And also I can define the output. This is also a mandatory field. This defines what output your report will be delivered in. So for instance, text file or a doc file. You can also upload your style sheets relevant to a report. This affects the layout. So for instance, if you're viewing it in a landscape or portrait mode, affecting the fonts and paragraph aligning, things like that. And you can also define the applicable entities for the report. So basically this means that whether the report should be generated with a substance or a mixture product. You can also define the submission types the report is relevant for. So for instance, the reach registration 10 to 100 tons can be selected. So this is what the actual window looks like when you're editing or adding a report. A few little notes about the functionalities here. You can see there in the screenshot in the templates list that you can upload a new report. You can download any reports you have uploaded, and you can remove individually or all the templates that are listed there. The same goes for the style sheet as well as the output, where you can add or remove outputs. In the pick list you see below for the submission types and applicable entities, you just have to click on the downward arrow and select your options. So a quick word about editing or editing your report templates. It's important to note that when you upload your report templates, the main template should be indicated by the radial button next to the main template. So in the screenshot there, the very topmost report I've labeled as the main FTL. And then there's two other templates underneath. These are additional templates which normally go alongside the main template. For instance, you can see that I have a macros common free marker template. This allows me to repeatedly use a pick list data value, for instance, in the main template over and over again without re-inputting that in the main template. In that example as well, I've also included a utilities template. For this one, this lists through all the relevant sections I want the report to go through and extract information from. So, as I mentioned, on the ECHA 6 website, we have two new reports available to you to download and then use with the new Manage Reports feature of the report generator. As you can see in the slide, there's the ECHA 6 website, and you just have to go to the report generator page and go to the relevant part called report templates and save the templates you wish to use with the report generator. A quick reminder that you can reuse any of these reports to create and modify your own reports. So, as I mentioned, you just click on Save As when you go to a new report. This will save then a zip file to your computer, and you can extract the zip file as shown there in the screenshot to create a new folder where you can upload the reports from. So in this example here, I have downloaded the new literature references report that's on the ECHA 6 website. I've uploaded it into the new Manage Reports feature. And now I can actually use this with the report generator of Euclid and generate a literature references report. And when you generate that report, there's a few little differences. Things are pretty much as normal. So you can generate a report as usual from a dataset or dossier. For instance, in this example, I've right-clicked on my mixture and I've selected Generate Report, you will notice that not only is there an SPC, Summary Product Characteristics report available, which is an inbuilt report in Euclid, but there's also the report that I have just imported into my Manage Reports feature, the Literature References report. If I select on this, it will then generate a few different options in the next part of the report generator wizard. I will then be able to select the defined outputs in the Manage Reports, which I had defined in the Manage Reports feature, and also give me the various style sheet options, which I had also defined in the Manage Reports feature. Okay, that's all from me. Here's some links to some useful websites, the ECHA 6 website, the ECHA 6 report generator web page, and also a free marker and dotbook help. Thank you. Tommy is the next presenter.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, everyone. My name is Tommy Hegg, and I'm working as the ECHA Cloud Service Product Manager here in ECHA. I want to take the next few minutes to tell you about the ECHA Cloud Services. It's a little bit a sidetrack from the Euclid 6.1.3 release, but this is the newest way ECHA has chosen to distribute the Euclid application, so I think it fits very well in the same scenario. So what is the ECHA Cloud Service? It is the ECHA's new way, simpler way to distribute IT applications. It's in a different way from where you download and install the application. ECHA takes care of the management of the application for you. Our ECHA Cloud is a secure private cloud, and you will be the only one who have access to your data. The main idea with the cloud is that you access it with the same user accounts you use for accessing, for example, Reach IT. In the cloud services, we have started by launching services focused on Euclid 6 and mainly focusing on functionalities that are targeting small and medium-sized enterprises and their needs for the 2018 registration deadline. If you would like to try it out, you can start from the echacloudservice.echa.europa.eu address and log in with your ECHA account. Now, what is the benefit with using cloud services versus another type? Well, first of all, you will always work with the latest version of the application. As we manage the application for you, we will make sure that every time you start it up, you will have the latest releases installed without you having to do anything. If there would have been a need to migrate data, we would also have taken care of this one for you. You would have a reduced risk of loss of data because ECHA would be taking care of the backups of the systems for you as well. The availability of the cloud from anywhere will facilitate you working from home. The only thing you need to have is an internet connection. You can have a web browser, and then you would be able to work on your Euclid data. The delegation to consultants and other workers in the same company would be much easier because you would be using the same access management you have for using the other ECHA IT tools. As this application is centrally stored, centrally located in ECHA, it gives us better possibilities for online support. At the moment, we already have a possibility for you to send the help desk ticket directly from the cloud. And in the future, we can also figure out much more advanced ways of supporting the users of the Euclid. There is no cost associated to the use of the cloud, and of course, at the same time, there is no cost for installation or management of the tools. With the fact that you would be using all of your data in a central place, there would be less risk for data loss, since there would be less local copies distributed. The first service we are putting out, that we're building in the ECHA Cloud Services, is a service we call ECHA Cloud for SME. This Euclid release, aimed for the SMEs to prepare the registration dossier, is planned to be released in the summer. Already starting from the Stakeholders Day on the 4th of April, there has been a trial release ready, and we are adding new features to this every month. So you can go and try it out if you are interested. The aim with the ECHA Cloud for SME is that you would be able to work fully in a web browser. You wouldn't have to install anything locally, as the features would be targeting the SMEs. If there would be any features that you can't find but you would like to use from the real traditional Euclid, you have the possibility to launch the traditional user interface as well to get access to it. And as mentioned already before, you can allow other users to access your Euclid database with their own ECHA accounts. We will be providing more webinars in relation to the cloud once we are getting there. We're also going to prepare a web stream for the phase 5 of preparing your dossiers in relation to the cloud. But for now, that's it.
So thank you for submitting your questions. I will so after the webinar we will post on the Euclid website written documents with all the questions and answers. But I will already address some of the topics you submitted questions on during this webinar. So the first one is the REACH study results. There were several questions on the refresh rate of this database. So we have not decided yet how often we will do the refresh of this dataset, but based on the user feedback and the number of downloads we monitor on the Euclid website, we will define what will be the most appropriate refresh rate. Of course, if you have specific needs, for example, if your processes would benefit from a monthly or yearly refresh rate, then this is the kind of feedback that you can send to the ECHA help desk for us to take into account to define the frequency of the refresh of the database. There was a question also whether this registration data was included in the QSAR toolbox. It's indeed included there, so if you are using the QSAR toolbox, you can use the REACH registration database directly within the tool. You don't need to download separately the Euclid database. Some questions about the comparison tool. We know that the comparison is not always accurate when comparing data that has been migrated from Euclid 5 to Euclid 6, so we will be working on that in the next version of Euclid. And we know also that there is a need to have a better report. For example, the possibility to export the full comparison report in an HTML or Excel format. So we will also add that to the list of improvements that we should include in future releases. Some questions about the availability of two features that have been discontinued between Euclid 5 and Euclid 6. The first one is the fee calculation plugin. So now we are targeting the October release to reintroduce this functionality in Euclid, so to have a fee calculation plugin by October this year. And then the advanced search function of Euclid is not available anymore. And to replace it, we are developing a separate IT application in order to do advanced searches on the entire content of Euclid database, including attachments. And this IT application will undergo a beta testing phase before summer. So you will be informed via the Euclid website about when we start this beta testing phase. Finally, some questions on the cloud. So some attendees were asking whether all features of Euclid were already available in the cloud. So yes, everything is available because in the cloud we are hosting the real Euclid 6 application. Although we are also preparing a web interface focusing on the needs for registrations for the 2018 deadline. And this web interface is progressively improved to include more features. If you are missing some features that you know exist in Euclid, you have always the possibility to launch what we call the Euclid client. That will give you access to everything you have currently if you are a Euclid 6 user. So you can have access to the standard Euclid application via the cloud as well. This means that data exchange, so importing data that you receive from other users, from consultants or from other companies, is possible. Exporting data is possible as well. Generating reports, all the features are available there in the cloud. But as Tommy said, we will give you more information once the Euclid Cloud Services for SME is launched during summer. So we will post more information on this webinar afterwards on the Euclid website. But before closing this event, I would like to do some promotion for future events that we are organizing in ECHA. There will be a Roadmap 2018 Spring School, and it's a rerun of all the webinars that were organized for the different steps of successful registration. And there is on day 4 a webinar on how to prepare your registration using Euclid and Rich IT. And there will be an extension to this webinar, as Tommy said, to cover the Euclid Cloud services. And we will be answering also your questions live during this webinar. And this is in the middle of May, so the 18th of May will be the rerun of the phase 4 webinar. We are also, in the context of the 2018 roadmap, preparing some video tutorials, and we want to publish a series of video tutorials on Euclid functions, really short video tutorials, 1 to 3 minutes, and the first 4 videos will be available in May, and the topics are written here on the screen. So how to install Euclid 6 desktop, how to run the validation assistant, how to update a Euclid installation, and how to backup and restore your Euclid data. And based on, we are also expecting your feedback on what will be the next useful videos to make on to highlight some Euclid features. Another information as well, we have opened since last Friday a LinkedIn group, and if you have a LinkedIn account, you can connect to the group. And this is a platform where we want to exchange a bit more with Euclid users to discuss different way of using Euclid and the future evolutions of the product. So you can just join now the group and be more involved in the development of our database. As usual, we will update also the Euclid product page on the Euclid website, and this is the place where you can also have more generic information on the Euclid 6 releases. But also in this LinkedIn group, we will provide more details about the ongoing developments for this tool. So thank you for your participation, and you can still send your questions for a few minutes, and we will close the webinar and then prepare all the materials for the publication on the Euclid 6 website. But thanks again from my side and all the panelists here, and see you next time. Bye.